something very strange is happening in the war between the United States and Iran. This was supposed to be a short operation, a few days of strikes, a weakened regime in Tehran, and then negotiations. Instead, the war is expanding, and now even the Trump administration appears unsure how it ends. When the United States launched strikes on Iran, the assumption inside Washington appears to have been simple: hit the Iranian military hard, destabilize the leadership, force Tehran back to the negotiating table, or possibly something even more ambitious: a leadership change, perhaps the end of the Islamic regime. Early conversations with allies suggested the military phase might last just a few days. Rapid strikes would shock the regime. Political cracks would appear inside Iran, and eventually a new leadership might emerge, one more willing to negotiate with Washington. In other words, the strategy looked similar to something the Trump administration had tried a couple of months before in Venezuela: pressure the regime, create instability, and hope the internal political system collapses. But wars rarely unfold the way they are planned, and this one certainly hasn't. The administration offered several explanations for launching the war: the nuclear program in Iran, its expanding ballistic missile capability, diplomatic obstruction during negotiations, intelligence suggesting Israel might act first. Individually, each of these concerns has existed for years. None of them clearly explains why the strikes had to happen right now, or why the operation expanded so quickly beyond limited military targets. That is why many analysts describe the Iran war as something unusual: a war of choice. There was no American ultimatum that Tehran rejected, no immediate attack on the United States. Instead, the conflict appears to have been triggered by a mix of strategic opportunity, intelligence concerns, and political calculations. And when a war begins, under those circumstances, expectations become extremely important. Because if events unfold differently than expected, the political pressure grows quickly. One of the most striking aspects of the conflict is how little visible preparation occurred beforehand. There were no early evacuations of American citizens from the region. There was little planning for disruptions to shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, and there was no clear explanation of what the United States would do politically if the Iranian leadership collapsed. Some discussions surfaced about supporting Kurdish groups in Iraq. Those conversations quickly disappeared. Meanwhile, the Pentagon began scrambling to reinforce defenses across the region. Additional missile interceptors were rushed to Gulf allies. Air defense systems were redeployed. At one point, the United States even reportedly reached out to Ukraine for drone support. These are not the actions of a country executing a short, carefully contained operation. They are the actions of a government realizing the war may become much larger than expected, and now the costs are rising. 7 American service members have already been killed. Energy prices are surging. Oil prices have climbed sharply. Natural gas prices are rising again in Europe, and gasoline prices in the United States have reached the highest levels of either Trump presidency. The economic impact is spreading beyond energy. Fertilizer prices are increasing. Shipping insurance costs are rising, and global supply chains are starting to feel the pressure. At the same time, the war is stretching American military capacity. The United States is already supporting Ukraine. It maintains a large strategic presence in Asia, and now it is conducting a major military campaign in the Middle East. The conventional military of Iran has taken serious damage. Its air force and navy have been heavily degraded. But Tehran still has one powerful tool left: drones, thousands of them. Its infamous Shait drones are cheap, numerous, and difficult to intercept. Even a weakened Iran can still impose real costs on shipping, infrastructure, and regional stability, which raises an obvious question: why not end the war now? From a purely political standpoint, the safest strategy for the administration would be to declare victory soon. The IRGC and the military have been badly damaged. Its nuclear program has been set back, and the regime has now seen the consequences of confrontation. Washington could claim success, then reopen negotiations from a stronger position. That path would still carry risks. Iran could continue launching drone attacks. Proxy groups might remain active across the region, and the regime would almost certainly continue repressing domestic opposition. But those risks would likely exist under any scenario short of a full-scale invasion. Instead, the administration appears to be moving in the opposite direction, toward escalation. The timeline for the war has already changed dramatically. At first, officials suggested the campaign might last only a few days. Then it became 4 weeks. Now some discussions inside Washington are stretching that timeline to 8 weeks or longer. At the same time, the political demands on Iran have increased. President Trump has called for unconditional surrender. He has suggested the United States should have veto power over the future leadership in Tehran. Those demands move the conflict much closer to outright regime change. But historically, regime change is extremely difficult. It usually requires one of two things: a powerful internal opposition or large numbers of foreign troops. Iran currently has neither, which means the most likely outcome may be something very different from what was originally imagined. Instead of collapsing, the Iranian state may simply weaken. A damaged but still functioning regime, one that continues launching disruptive attacks, one that continues supporting militant groups across the region, and one that may draw an important lesson from the war: that nuclear weapons are the only reliable guarantee of survival. Ironically, that possibility was reportedly predicted in an American intelligence assessment completed before the strikes. An assessment the administration apparently chose not to publicize. But the risks do not end there, because the longer the war continues, the more unpredictable it becomes. A mass casualty terrorist attack, a prolonged spike in oil prices, a major strike on critical infrastructure in the Gulf, or a conflict that slowly drains American military capacity. Any one of those events could suddenly shift public opinion against the war, even among Trump's core supporters. At best, the Iran conflict may become a serious political liability ahead of the next election. At worst, it could become the most consequential foreign policy mistake of the Trump presidency. And the longer the war continues, the harder it becomes to find a clean way out.